as a reporter, it's gotten a lot easier to get sources on the phone, especially like sources who are in a lot of board meetings, because their boards are just them with their camera off on Zoom. And so I love, hey, are you busy? No, I'm on a board meeting. What's up?
That's hilarious.
Why, hello, friends. How's it going?
Hello, you're looking pretty today.
Oh, thank you. Yes,
Hey.
For all the viewers, I am not wearing my usual work at home garb because I just came from a cool awards lunch in San Francisco, which I can talk about in a sec. But, well, friends, welcome to another episode of More or Less. Yet another week has passed us by, and here we are.
I feel like a lot went down last week, and there's still a lot to talk about, even from last week. So maybe we'll get to that today because Dave's back.
Dave's back. We're up a Dave. We're down a Sam. But
hey guys,
let's just give the shout out to the ladies who
keep showing up.
Over
keep
here.
showing up.
That's right.
I'm happy that I'm even here.
Dave's battling the flu. At least it's not COVID.
I don't know. Influenza A, it might be worse than COVID. I'm definitely on the tail end of it, but it was rough.
I've seen Dave with both COVID and flu is definitely hitting him harder. So don't get the flu.
I don't recommend. Do not
recommend. Did you
recommend.
get your flu shot, Dave? I mean, you can get the flu even with your flu shot. That's one of the...
I did.
Yes.
And my doctor was quick to remind me that the flu shot is only 40% effective or whatever.
Well, it's different every year, actually.
Yeah.
They haven't even published... Okay, they did publish actually 46% effectiveness against influenza A for this most recent. Oh, but that's for children, and 27 to 46% effectiveness for adults.
Yep, can confirm. Confirm.
Did you know they don't come out with the effectiveness until the end of February because they obviously need to see how the season goes? So, sorry, Dave.
Is what it is.
Okay. Well, but now you're immune, so you can go and you can get influenza A with abandon anywhere you'd like. I'm glad you're on the mend. We will carry on without Sam, but you've got Jessica, Dave, and Britt here to deep dive into the week. So let's do it, guys. Oh, first I got to talk about this lunch. So as a former New Yorker, I must say, New York does a good power lunch, right? Like, I don't know if you guys
like a
know,
lunch
right?
gala, you would call it.
Like a lunch gala, like think a ballroom and, a lot of salmon and all that kind of stuff.
None of these things make sense in the context of San Francisco.
Except I just came from downtown San Francisco, the Julia Morgan Ballroom.
Yep.
I've been
First
there.
female architect in California.
Fantastic architect.
Among other things like Hearst Castle, I'm for your news trivia. But I, along with about 20 awesome women, were being honored as inspiring women of the San Francisco Bay Area.
Wow.
And it was a cool event. Among the honorees, far more impressive women like Nancy Pelosi and London Breed and many, many others across philanthropy, business, tech, and so forth. And it was cool we don't have to talk about me being honored, but the coolest thing about it was, actually, I didn't realize that there are a lot of women in leadership positions in San Francisco news. The San Francisco Examiner is owned by Janet Riley and her husband. And I also met a lot of other amazing female editors, including the editor of the Examiner and much, much more. So
they're all still employed in the media industry.
They are all still employed in the media industry. And it was a good reminder. I know, Britt, you're a woman in the media business. Like this is a good, not that we don't have work to do, but it also seems very cool to kind of celebrate
There is like a coalition for sure. I actually caught up earlier today with a former founder of a really large media company who is a woman. I won't say which one. And there's this eye to eye thing. First of all, for conquering the media business, which is a slog. And second, I mean, just to be a female founder is a whole other thing, right? Which is also a slog. And so I think that it's amazing that you got to be around so many of these incredible leaders. Were there women in tech there too? Like, obviously you're in tech, but was it journalism, politics?
Not as many women in tech.
Not many women leading the San Francisco Tech Coalition.
No, not. And we know, I mean, we've had Julia, our good friend Julia, on the pod, and there are many others, but it was not. No, I mean, and that's interesting and problematic, right? It was a lot of like Congresswoman Eshoo, a lot of sort of politics.
And did you get any intel? Did you learn anything?
Did I learn anything? No, but it felt great. I mean, I'm like pro. I want to just put it out there, San Franciscans, that we too can power lunch.
Oh, okay. That's the point of the story.
Yeah, no, that's the point of the story. But also, like, my main, I also find it really funny. Now we are going to talk about Reddit, and we're going to get back to good old tech. But there's something when you sit down at a table at 11 and they go rosé or coffee, and you're like, yeah.
Both, please. I'm double fisting today.
A rosé at 11. Anyway, so that was but this is a plug for the power lunch. I think the other thing about the power lunch is you can do it in an hour, right? You can go, I love a good evening gala, but you're not in and out in an hour.
First of all women would love to have our in and out of everything because we've got a lot of shit to do. We're doing the mental load of all the things, household, childcare, work. So I appreciate that a women's event is when it's kept on time and like to schedule in and out. So that's great.
And we're willing to acknowledge that men are also busy and have to do these things as well so that they can also reap the efficiency of the highly efficient lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyone wants to have a lunch gala in downtown San Francisco, please call me.
We should just host a more or less power lunch and see who shows up.
No. And then
in and out in an hour. That's the rule with rosé and coffee.
Yeah. I think it's great. And maybe it's just called lunch. I don't know. But I also think, to tie it back to maybe something that our listeners care about, San Francisco's hopping, guys. I have 4 events in 3 days. And you guys are, your schedules are jam-packed. I mean, Britt couldn't even make it to my power lunch. She's so busy.
I know.
So,
well, that was mostly with work stuff, not fun things. But
do you guys feel it? You feel like there's an energy to the Bay?
I think there's an energy to the Bay. And I think that some of the real estate is turning over. And so there's a lot of new stuff going in. I'm excited about how a lot of people are taking advantage of IRL experiences once again and programming what used to be retail space or office space into new community spaces, which I think galvanizes a lot of people's relationships and events in San Francisco. And then, of course, like the AI boom is bringing a lot of people back here too. And not to mention the return to hybrid or full-time office. So we're bullish on SF.
You're bullish.
We're more. Yes.
Dave, are you more? Are you feel like you're having more in-person meetings these days?
I'm aggressively trying. I've actually been pushing really hard to shift as much of my schedule to in-person as possible. And I'm actually shocked at how hard it is to get people to meet in person. And it's been somewhat disheartening that I haven't been able to get it to push as far as I'd like. But that being said, I am in the city a lot more, the South Bay a lot more. I think I would just agree. Like things are back. Feels pretty great, actually. I'm hoping I can, if I could wave a magic wand and shift my schedule to being all in person again, I would love that. I kind of think that the Zoom life is very sad and lonely, and that we could all use more in-person interaction. So I'm all for more power lunches, more whatever. Let's just hang out in person more.
I've talked about this book on the pod a few times, and I'm reading it slowly. But I think it's called The Unorganized Mind, or it is The Organized Mind. It's one
The
of
Organized Mind. Yeah, because I started reading after you talked about it.
So I was reading the part last night about how horrible multitasking is for our brains. Like, it's not just that you're dividing your attention and being rude or less effective in paying attention. Like, it is wiring in this like fake this dopamine cycle that is the equivalent, according to the author, of like empty calories. Yep. So not only are you, is there the cost of not paying attention to your colleagues? And I thought of this, Dave, when you're talking about Zoom and the temptation around multitasking. But at the same time, it's like we're become these like mindless mice dopamine brain things. And like we are literally flooding our brain with like horrible stuff that's horrible for it by doing it. And I thought that was fascinating.
And provoking more anxiety. There's a new book that just came out that we just got called The Anxious Generation, which is about how all of this has not only facilitated anxiety among adults, but of course our kids. And there's this newer debate I've been sensing, which is just like, are we in Silicon Valley and those in kind of like the first world countries who have more access to information to understand how terrible screens can be for especially children going to be the first to start to limit them the most and therefore sort of break the curve or bend the curve of basically are those in first world countries going to end up being better off because we have access to understanding of how this is impacting us first and able to sort of break the trends?
I see no sign that we're trend breaking.
Yeah.
I don't think we are now. This is sort of like presumptive.
Just look at us.
Britt, weren't you the one wearing a multitasker shirt all weekend?
Well, that was sent to me by Sarah Blakely, who founded Spanx. And
how's her shoe company doing?
I'm not sure, but I do want to recommend the Air
that was the Dodge
fabric, the Air fabric, something that Spanx now offers. It's not just about like the compression tights for women anymore. They actually have like athleisure and it's very comfortable. And she sent me one and it had embroidered in it multitasker, which is accurate and fair and not personalized to me. This is like a SKU that they offer. But I think it's funny that some people want to be known as multitaskers.
Yeah, you've always been proud of it.
Well, that was why I think this part of the book was so really hit you because it has society celebrates it in lots of different ways. And it's sort of become kind of like a positive, you can juggle it all, blah, blah, blah. But again, and Dave, you've been on the leading edge of like thinking about mental health in the tech world, but like to ignore what the science is doing to our bodies. Which was why I actually started reading this book because I felt like my brain and my mind, like it just all wasn't in sync.
So how did you change your workday, Jess? Or how did you change like your habits?
Well, I read this last night. The book, which I like and would recommend to people, my criticism of it is kind of all over the place. It will jump from like organizing your closet to like organizing your email. And there's common threads in that, but like as a kind of how-to, it's a little all over the place. But one of the things I've really taken away from it is combining the element of space in my organization. So like our brains can remember things like where we sort of store like where the locations that things are is like in a different part of our brain than other things. And we can leverage that to have better memory. So this is like, those like mentalist people who can remember everything actually think about the different components of the brain. So I actually have different to-do lists in different parts of my house for things that are sort of on that list contextual to that place, right? So like I work from home 2 days a week and the kinds of items I do when I'm working from home and I can just power through, like actually live on physical lists that are in those places. So I'm trying to play with the concept of like space as a kind of anchoring a little bit.
So they call it a memory palace. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the main ones. But I also think, I really try not to be a multitasker, but I now, this isn't an excuse, but after reading this, I'm like, it's like an addiction. Like you can't be on a Zoom and see an email like that, noticing something come in while you're on a Zoom is just starting the cycle, right? And it's like,
But to be fair, I'm often on Zoom with people that just talk and say stupid shit or linger, and it's really hard for me to stay focused. I need the efficiency.
I mean, this is all of 12 hours fresh, or I didn't go to bed at 2 a.m. But like, I think I'm just going to probably make my meetings a lot shorter to force me to jam everything in the meeting.
Yeah.
So I can't
That's
multitask.
a good idea. I like it. You should do that for your whole organization.
Yeah. I'm the one who keeps meetings longer because I have a lot to say. But like, I think, to Dave, to your point, forcing in person is another way to do that, right? And then maybe actually using the do not disturb feature when I'm on Zooms. I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not sitting there thinking like it's a good time to buy those leggings on Instagram. Often I'm not thinking that. But you're doing something, then something interrupts you and your brain tricks you to thinking like, oh, that person needs something from me. I don't want to hold them up.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give them an answer. But then I started the brain cycle. And before you know it, anyway. But I will say, I think I've said on the pod before, as a reporter, it's gotten a lot easier to get sources on the phone, especially like sources who are in a lot of board meetings, because their boards are just them with their camera off on Zoom. And so I love, hey, are you busy? No, I'm on a board meeting. What's up?
That's hilarious.
Why do they get to be camera off? I always have to be camera on my
That's
board
when
meeting.
you break the real news, because they're just like, please give me something else to do besides this board meeting. So
I enjoy my board meetings.
Okay, speaking of boards, guys, we had an IPO in tech.
2 IPOs.
That went pretty well. What's happening? What year is it? Britt, give us the download.
Well, I predicted this, first of all, just so you remember.
I do remember. If Sam were here, he'd say he predicted it. So
Sam would say that the fallout hasn't happened yet.
Yes, that's true.
So I will actually hedge on that. It's only been a week and we don't know. But Reddit and Astera Labs both went public last Thursday. They opened around mid-30s or so, and both of them are roughly like 2x up right now on the markets, even though they've kind of gone up and down 5-10% a bit at a time. So
Reddit's down 11%. Yeah.
11%.
But that's just the last day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it has not been bad, guys.
It's not bad.
Look at that. That's positive. So yeah, sorry, Britt, keep going.
No, I think that, now all the bankers, of course, are signaling we're in for a frothy market. Interest rates will continue to fall this year. These 2 IPOs went well. Like the window is open, risk on. So I do think we're probably going to see a few more companies try to get out over the next month or two, especially before summertime. And I'm curious to see who it'll be.
Dave, what's your read?
I mean, I think it's consistent with what we were talking about related to Reddit before they went out. I mean, it's just a great company that is only just starting to figure out monetization. The price seems like really fair to me right now, given where they're at. I mean, in contrast to what Truth Social also, Reddit's sitting at a $9.1 billion market cap today. I need to go look at what their revenue looks like. But I mean, their revenue is somewhere in the ballpark of $500 million, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And meanwhile, Truth Social is also a $10 billion market cap on $3 million in revenue.
Does everyone know what Truth Social is? I don't think everyone knows that.
Britt, educate the uninitiated.
It's Trump's social media
Twitter
company. Which, did you know that the actual corporation name is, Digital World Acquisition Corp merged with Trump Media and Technology Group, the owner of Truth Social. And in March, they just completed this merging. So they went public and stock has jumped as much as 50%.
Yes, but
IPOs are back.
SPACs specifically, that would be a twist.
This is like the world's most insane pump and dump of all time. Like,
also, it's because Trump needs to make bonds, right? Like he needs to pony up some money for his legal.
Yeah, but like problems. You can't do that with with a SPAC in 1 week, right? I mean, I don't know.
No, you shouldn't be able to. That's correct.
I just thought it was ridiculous that we're sitting here looking at two market caps of the same size, one doing 3 million in revenue, one doing 500 million. Completely ridiculous. So I don't know. I'm psyched for Reddit. I think that's super great. And it does look like Jerome Powell gave us a gift this week. He seemed positive and upbeat, and things are going to stay neutral, but we're looking at a couple of rate cuts towards the end of the year. And so all of that's positive. And you saw this sort of rip into the market. I thought it was quite interesting. The equities market ripped, crypto dipped on the same day. It's super clear that everybody's kind of risk on again. So it seems positive.
I think, Britt, your question of who's next is a good one, because it's still kind of that class that kind of has to go, I think.
Yeah, like Stripe, Canva. There's like a whole slew of these companies.
Stripe doesn't. I mean, Stripe is. I don't. The founders never want to go public. They every once in a while tell a journalist they're open to it. Yeah.
If the window is open, will they? Is the question, right?
Yeah, Stripe definitely no time soon. Canva's a good one. They had an acquisition this week, and we at The Information published some of their financials this week too.
Canva's such a cool story.
I love Canva.
Yeah. Tell the story, Dave, for those who don't know.
Well, I just think the founder, kind of against all odds, has like a very typical entrepreneurial story of just getting like 100 no's in a row to get this company off the ground.
Yep.
Female founder,
Melanie,
just like
she's awesome.
Amazing. And
she's like 35. She's not like, she's like young.
Kept going. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And Australian. Like, I think it's, it's interesting to see a company headquartered in Australia do this well with a female founder who's fairly young. And what are they valued at now? Like something like 28 billion in valuation?
26.
Yeah, 26.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And people love Canva. So it's definitely, I think there's so much more they could do there.
So for those who aren't familiar, Canva is a great set of design tools for doing, quick graphics, charts, presentations, a whole lot of things, really easy to use. Definitely faces a lot of competition, right? I mean, there are a lot of companies in that area, and then has rushed to kind of AI to make things even easier. And I think come into a little more direct competition with Adobe. But our piece this week was also about how they're looking to like the enterprise business to about quarter of their 1.7 billion in ARR came from corporate sales last year. And they're trying to grow that. But it's a great, I agree with everything you said, Brad. I like the founder a lot too. And just from a perspective of like someone who seems to be a great leader and has like I'm always struck by she has a very clear leadership style, which I think is cool, and is sort of embraced it. Like every meeting with her, even if you're a journalist like myself, like you get like a slide deck and she's like has these really long range plans, like really, really long range plans.
Yeah. Well, she started this when she was 19, and the first iteration of the company was a yearbook design company, which I just,
it's cool.
Again, it kind of bodes to like also startups take time, these flash in the pan truth socials of the world. It takes real time to build something at scale that impacts a lot of people, and it takes a lot of grit from the founders to do that and to stay with it for that long. So it's a really cool
these
story.
Companies, I mean, it's interesting because so Reddit is trading what you said around 9 and change billion.
Yep.
Which is still under its last private market valuation. Not a lot under, just a hair under, but it'll be interesting. I mean, that's kind of accepted now, right? The companies that those valuations, again, which are generally for preferred rounds where preferred investors are getting all sorts of preferences as preferred investors do. I mean, it used to be that if you were under that, you were doomed, but the market's shifted. I think everyone kind of understands that. But I don't know. I'm interested in plug for the Information's Private Capital Conference on April 9th in New York. But we're going to talk a lot about what public investors are looking for. And we have some great ones, as well as heads of ECM for all the investments banks. But I think there's obviously, if you, from the point of view of these investors, it's like you could buy Reddit or you can just buy more Google, Amazon.
Yeah.
So like the big guys are ripping too. So yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. I'm very excited, by the way. I'm interviewing Philippe Lafont at that event, the founder of Co2, which, has a huge tech public market hedge fund business, but also plays very actively in the private markets. So as well as Anton Levy, I'm just going to do the plug of General Atlantic. So it's going to be really good. Mark Lore, Lori or Lore?
Oh, it's a good question.
We'll
Tomato,
find
tomato.
out. We'll find
tomato,
out.
tomato.
But it's an
I think
interesting
Lore.
time. I mean, I know you guys are focused on the early stage, but do you sense like how are entrepreneurs looking at this moment in the markets? Like, does it seem like a shift for them, or whatever happens to Reddit isn't really relevant?
That's hard to say. I think that it's a good signal, no matter how you look at it. I think it's a good signal that we're seeing a good tech company get out there. I think it's a good signal that it was priced reasonably well, that everybody did their job, and that it's seems to be performing in the market. And so that's a positive thing. That's a positive thing for founders. It's a positive thing for early investors. That's what we want to see. We want to see more of it, right? So the less the ecosystem is stopped and blocked from going to the market, like the better for everyone.
Well, and LPs, right? If LPs are finally getting returns
Liquidity
from some of these IPO exits, then they're able to hopefully pour more into venture funds, which can hopefully pour more into startups. And I don't think founders totally understand that cycle, but I do think that downstream effects of that, even though they'll take probably a year or two for that whole cycle to sort of play out, assuming more IPOs go well this year, it could mean that, 2025 tail end and 2026 are really powerful years to be entering into the startup ecosystem or raising another round, if that's the case.
So what would Sam say? No.
Yeah, I want to know what you think Sam would say.
Okay, I'm going to do my best, Sam. I mean, Sam would be like, but does it matter? That's what he would say.
Yeah, because all of this is worthless anyway, and no one's going to win, and venture capital is dead.
And then he'd go skiing.
Yeah. Or he'd go and actually do a bunch of AI deals after saying, no, that's unfair. I think the question, that is kind of the question. So like LPs have been kind of wait and see or frozen on venture, in part because their like ratios are off, right? Because they're overexposed to private relative to public tech. And so this is what they say. And the implication being like they're ready to bounce back in at a moment's notice. But they also say things like, it's unclear how you're going to put capital to work in AI, or they're pulling back from co-investing, right? So this is actually a question I'd like to learn a lot more about, is actually all the different dynamics at play for these big institutional investors, many of which, like, it seems like there's more to kind of coax them back into venture. But it's if it were just the public-private ratio thing, I think that would be one. But I think it's kind of more than that too, right? It's the macro. It's what do they want to invest in tech? Or are they playing like is their venture strategy like go with the big guys like Andreessen, which, in some ways doesn't even resemble a venture capital firm in a lot of respects? Or is it like try and bet on, really young kind of emerging managers who will strike out 9 times but hit 1 home run, right? So I think that's why it's super interesting. And then at the same time, you've got, one of the things that happened the last week is we saw more reports about, the Saudis backing, in this case, potentially Andreessen, with yet another sort of mega fund. Clearly, you sort of talk about capital coming into the system. There's so much from the sovereign wealth perspective. We're going to have Ibrahim, the head of venture at Mubadala, at our event as well, talking about that. So I think to your point, there could be a lot of different sources of capital coming in. And that's like what keeps the venture wheel turning. but it does seem like there's a lot of blockage to work through.
Yeah.
You guys would agree with that? The venture capitalists are like, no,
I'm waiting for Dave to jump in. I feel like I've talked a lot.
Well, I think that the macro really does matter, right? Like, I think that, for the most part, big institutional investors of all scales, they're allocating 5%, 10% maybe maximum of their portfolio into the venture asset class. And, if you're making trades between in an interest rate environment like the one we're in, the treasury bills are a really good investment. And so it does also just come down to basic math, right? That like it's easier to get returns on a shorter liquidity horizon at 6% or whatever from your sort of most basic investment vehicles. And then if you're looking for alpha, it's like in a macro environment like this, it's hard to find. And I think venture also got really over its skis. I mean, we've talked about this ad nauseum. And so the kind of what's going on has made sense the last few years. Here we are, we're sitting here looking at an IPO that went well, Fed that's talking about lowering rates again. And so, of course, risk is going to move back on and people are going to actually start to think about allocating into the venture asset class again. I think it's just like basic macro economics that's going on. And I think the other thing that happened is Jess, to your point about like how do they choose who to work with, I think it kind of comes down to how much time do they have, right? Like, do they want to go out there and do a bunch of work trying to figure out what emerging managers are worth investing in? That just takes time. Do they want to hire a team to do that? Or do they want to just buy the blue chip thing that, they're not going to get fired for buying, right? And maybe produce slightly less alpha. I think that's like kind of the questions that people ask.
Can I point out there was an interesting study that TechCrunch reported on about the unicorn founder DNA report by Defiance Capital. So they've been tracking about 1,000 unicorns, aka a startup that's valued at multiple billions of dollars, and 2,000 unicorn founders to figure out like if there were a correlation between who these unicorn founders were, who backed them, like what themes and theses were they chasing, basically all kinds of common traits. And interestingly enough, no VC fund got into more than like 2.8% of unicorns. And that 2.8 was Sequoia. And that, mostly generalist funds were in the unicorns. And it was very fragmented across like known brands and new emerging manager funds, which I think is just really interesting to prove that like these early stage funds are really kind of random, to be honest. But another cool stat about the founders themselves is that 70% of the unicorn companies have what they refer to as an underdog founder. So either an immigrant, a woman, or a person of color. Half of them had STEM degrees, and half of them had degrees from the top 10 global universities. But, one specific degree wasn't required. And anyways, I just thought this was really interesting to continue to prove the point that, for LPs to do the work, I think is really important, because even if you just continue to put your money into Sequoia and Andreessen, like they're not getting the lion's share sometimes of these bigger companies. And a lot of these younger firms are still performing, even if they're only a few years old. So scatter the assets.
We published this week our first next GP list. So our reporters, did a tremendous amount of reporting to come up with the people who we think are most likely to become the next general partners, either at sort of existing firms or following the sort of start your own. And it was an idea I had after conversations with LPs around this very thing. It's sort of like, how do you scout out those managers? And so anyway, it was really fun, and we got some nice feedback on it. So, which doesn't always happen. Not everyone likes the news these days. Okay, so lots to watch in venture IPOs. I mean, it's also just really hard to make a trend out of 1 to 2 things. I think that's probably what Sam would say, right? Like we have to continue to watch this space.
You mean 1 to 2 companies? Yeah, Trent, you mean, so we need like how many to go public and do well for
journalists need 3 of everything, as this is
really?
the rules of journalism.
So if one new company exits and it goes well in the IPO market, the information will claim risk on.
Well, so I have to read you guys, and I pulled it up and then I, of course, lost it again. But I have to read. Bankers only need 2 examples, but journalists need 3. So Colin Stewart, who's a great Morgan Stanley banker who's been in this space for a while, told Corey, I believe the last 2 transactions usher us out of a sober clinical market into a lean-in market, he said in an exclusive interview. So there you go. Lean in. It's like wax on, wax off.
But of course the bankers will say that, right?
No, I know. I was saying that both genuinely and
okay. Just making sure we are all clear on that.
I also like the language. Every industry has their jargon.
Totally.
And investment bankers top the list. Okay, so we talked about Wall Street. Should we talk about DC for a little bit? I mean, this is the other big power center outside of our power center. I mean, not a new theme, but man, the regulators are chomping at the bit. I will also say I'm full of stories this week, and I can't say more for security reasons, but some very senior government officials bought a group subscription to the information this week, and it arrived via, we had to sign for the check that was written like out of your grandmother's checkbook, like handwritten.
America.
With the description of the office that this thing came from, which I'm not saying. And I just thought it was great. I loved it.
You should have just been accepting Bitcoin, Jess.
Highlight of my week. Like,
Britt, that would mean that America would actually get its act together and stop working on paper.
Like, how long until America is just sending you a Bitcoin transfer rather than someone physically showing up with a physical?
I don't know, but I will take America's money any way America wants to send it to me.
But would you take America's Bitcoin?
Sure. Or no, It will be a USD or whatever kind of stable coin we have.
Exactly.
But it was like, it's like, really, guys? Really? Okay, Dave, I don't think we have you on, you were off when Apple's been in the hot seat with the DOJ. So I see a head shaking here, but give the people your thoughts on Apple here.
I mean, I just think this whole kind of, speaking of trends of 3s or 4s, I can't even keep track now of how many of these lawsuits have been levied against tech companies. But it's, to me, just kind of credibility reducing what's going on with all of this. Like it just seems to be like these are political lawsuits almost entirely. What was the last one we talked about? Amazon?
Yeah. Or Google or Meta. I mean, basically this now you've got 2 DOJs, 2 FTCs. This kind of completes
So what have we got going on here? This is kind of the administration doing the right thing to rein in the man, like it's...
Wait, hold on, Britt, you're the pro regulation of the bunch. What do you think?
I'll give my feedback after Dave. Dave,
okay, sorry,
going.
Dave.
I just think it's completely foolish. Like the substance of the suit as well. It's just like, I mean, I guess I could go line for line, but it seems tenuous at best. I don't think you can make I really don't think there's an antitrust case inside of this suit. I think it's very, very hard. You can't claim that just on one simple piece of data, which is that Apple doesn't even have a monopoly position in the smartphone market, and like the lawsuit had to reduce the scope of the smartphone market to like just the expensive part of the market in order to try to make their case.
Oh, market definition. Yes.
But I mean,
the lawyers are...
come on. Like, it's just, I don't know, kind of ridiculous. I don't know. I'm a little bit out of it and sick, so I'm not remembering all the details. But I kind of read it as this is another political suit. I don't see there being real antitrust merit here. And, I think it's unfortunate. I'm, of course, the pro Apple person in our bunch, so I don't want to...
I think we'd all be classified as pro Apple. It's just a question of degrees. I mean, we all got Vision Pros, people. Let's let's put this. But Britt, what are your thoughts? And then I have some as well. But
I think regardless of anything, what's going to happen is that the government can't keep up with efficiency on any of this regulatory stuff. And so it just is going to take 5 to 10 years. And by that time, Apple will be everyone will have moved on from this. And the whole OS will probably be much different anyways. I feel like at a macro level, we can't regulate Silicon Valley and the technology industry unless we're doing it on a timeline that can keep up with Silicon Valley and the technology industry. And I'm dubious that is going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. I think your point, it's interesting, Dave. I mean, I was covering Google in 2008-9, which was when they really started getting in their first regulatory hot water around search. And there's a lot of scrutiny. And you guys may remember they wanted to, when Yahoo was for sale, one proposed was that Google would take over Yahoo search, and the Justice Department actually blocked that. And that was one of the first times that you sort of saw Google hampered in that way. But I do think there is a class of behavior that needs to be looked at in terms of all of these platforms and how they deal with developers and payment. I think that's fair game.
I was going to say the developer stuff is harder to think through than the consumer side, right?
Yeah. And what the Justice Department has to do is show that flow through to the consumer in some way. It's not dissimilar from the Justice Department has sued Google over its search deal with Apple. And I guess we'll have a verdict in that case at some point. So you have to show these things flow through. But yeah, I mean, it's a great point, Brett, about, these are clearly, there are a whole new set of issues called, AI, cloud computing, and so forth. And you're always going to somewhat feel like you're just fighting last decade's battles. At the same time, someone tweeted at me this week that they thought the tech industry didn't realize how much Washington had really turned on a dime on the issue of tech policy. So this tweet, I can't remember who it was, but it was someone whose name I knew and seemed to know what they were talking about. They said, you can look at the inaction over the last decade and say, oh, it's ineptitude and it shows DC will never get their act together, or the EU or whomever. Or you can just see it as there wasn't the political will to do something then, and that's changed. And I don't know, I'm not close enough to it to know the answer to that question, but that's kind of interesting if actually now these larger tech companies sort of face a new political reality or a question of political will, because that could be a rude awakening because they're kind of used to the inertia. Now, history would suggest that the United States government does not turn on a dime on anything, but I thought that was interesting. And then in light of the kind of ongoing action around TikTok, which it's funny, speaking of not tech time, I keep asking my team, what's happening? And they're like, well, the Senate's on vacation, so nothing's happening. So apparently in parts of the country, they take vacations and
spring break.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to spring break shortly. But again, that to think that, the balance of this app kind of,
right,
it hangs so much. But anyway, I think it's more complicated than certain senators are blocking action and so forth. But yeah, so it's an open question to what degree actually, if there was a change in political will, could that look very differently for these companies? But who knows?
Yeah, I also think that a lot of this stuff is big legal machination stuff, right? This is who knows where this is going to go. I think a lot of these things are trial balloons, right? When they're first filed, and they're meant as a legal procedural step, and they're kind of full of a lot of legal stuff that the layperson, any of us, has no real idea where the roadmap's going, and they're meant to kind of build public support or see if there's public support or whatever. It's just purely trial balloon. And
do you guys remember when the FTC had to refile its case against Meta? To your point, Dave, this was years ago, but their first big case that will come to trial sometime in the next decade, the court threw it out and said you have to redo it. You just it
not good.
Yeah, I thought that was the first time I'd ever seen that. So yeah, I think that supports your point. But you know, at the same time, well, here's a question for you guys. Who do you think has the most job security? Lawyers or venture capitalists, to our earlier conversation? In tech, if you're a young person, not that there's much overlap in those groups, but
wouldn't you, I would say venture capitalists who are actually changing the way they invest.
Yeah, lawyer, I don't know. It depends on because why. Like, I don't know. It's a good question.
I think the antitrust lawyer has to have a lot of job security
totally.
in Silicon Valley. I mean, it's crazy.
Like there's like the contracts lawyer and the paralegals.
We spoke about it last week, but actually following our taping last week, I broke more news with the team around the Inflection Microsoft deal and how it's structured. And you look through every T&C of that deal, which for those of you who didn't listen was essentially Microsoft hiring the team behind Inflection, licensing some of their technology, and not acquiring the company. And you just got a sense that some lawyers had a lot of fun and were very busy putting together that. So, okay, well, we hit Wall Street, we hit DC. I don't know, Britt, maybe we gotta wrap things up with a PCC. What's happening in the world?
What's going on? Oh, Selena Gomez is becoming one of the new unicorns with Rare Beauty, valued at now $2 billion. And I was actually a little surprised because I feel like so many celebrities have either started an alcohol company or a beauty company over the last 5 years. And I don't think all of them will have this kind of outcome. Selena notably has one of the highest followings on the internet, and I do have used the Rare Beauty product. It's actually legit.
What is it?
It's cosmetic,
but like makeup, skincare, moisturizer, makeup.
Yeah,
okay, got it.
Yeah, and really hit a vein with Gen Z, distribution across Ulta and massive retail conglomerates. So kudos to Selena Gomez. What I'm curious about is whether Taylor is going to start a product company in the next 5 years. You can imagine how quickly that would balloon for her. Just bear with me. Okay. She gets married. She's 35. It's time to have kids, take a little break from touring, but still wants to be a businesswoman, starts a product company.
I have a bigger question.
Dave, I want to know what Dave thinks about that, because
I think the question is, does she buy like a sports team?
Yeah, I think she's got a surprising orthogonal move.
Yeah.
I do not think it is, hyaluronic acid or whatever.
Yeah, I keep thinking that
moisturizers.
She already runs most of these stadiums, so why not run everything in the stadium? I sort of view her as going even more vertically integrated. It's like she controls this much of a stadium's monetization, might as well control the whole stack. I don't know.
Dave, I like it. I'm feeling it. I also think, isn't she directing? Doesn't she want to go kind of
behind the scenes? But again, I think it's surprising that she just became a billionaire after so many number one records and tours and things. Whereas Selena Gomez
it's that hard to do with just music.
I know, with just music. That's what I'm saying. I feel like she needs to diversify her portfolio and think about other categories in the next.
I don't think she's optimizing for cash.
I don't think she cares.
I mean, nor should she, right? But I can totally see that. It's which team is she going to buy, or something in that vein?
Yeah.
She can't buy a team if she's married to Travis Kelce. She can't buy the competing team stadium.
I don't know.
All right.
Okay, we want in the comments predictions about sports. Also, Britt, do you have the countdown going to April 19th? Are you?
Yeah. Tortured Poets Department. Yeah.
Yeah.
The new album.
What are we thinking? What vibe is this?
It's very academic. If you've noticed, she's been wearing white a lot. White button-ups, schoolgirly outfits, preppy.
But what's academic music sound like? Give me
the music itself is all about how Joe, her former boyfriend, was a huge douche and a-hole, and she calls him out in a lot of ways.
Nobody knows this, though.
I think it's interesting. Yeah, the lyrics are already. Many of the lyrics
whole thing makes fun of his. Thanks to you guys, I'm down the rabbit hole.
I must be behind.
The whole lyric makes fun of his like men's chat group, right? They called themselves the Tortured Somethings or something.
Right. Yeah. Like the whole album
Yeah,
is
but we
about
don't have
Joe.
lyrics of the songs yet.
There are some lyrics. Yeah. Like little stanzas that she's put out on social. Look it up. Google it. Gemini it.
Gemini. Bar Gemini GPT that thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Okay, guys. Well, I have become a Selena Gomez fan after watching Only Murders in the Building. This is like becoming a football fan, because of Travis Kelce, which I did not do, to be clear, but has been happening. Have you guys watched that show? It's good. Steve Martin Short.
I didn't really get into it, but I think I need to watch more. The first episode, I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah, you should
good
watch
cast,
it.
though. We just started watching Anatomy of a Fall. It's a little odd.
Yeah.
It won some of the Oscars, and I'm trying to figure out why.
Yeah, TV is like very... I started The Regime, you guys, the Kate Winslet.
Good?
Weird. That's all it's just weird.
People supposedly like it a lot.
I know. I'm going to stick with it. Also, Dave, have you heard the term dad TV or dad prestige TV?
No.
Oh my God. Yes. So
tell me about my life. Yeah.
Okay. So I read this article and I'm like, this is Sam. And I sent it to him and he's like, totally. So there's like a genre, I think it's called dad prestige television, and some magazine coined this. And it includes...
Do I want to know?
So like Masters of the Air.
Oh, yes.
And actually the new look.
Interesting.
One of Sam's friends recommended, and I'm like, you really want to watch the history of the fashion industry?
What about Three Body Problem? I just started watching that last week.
I'm not allowed to start it until Sam gets back. Oh, wait, here's the article. Yeah, how Apple cornered the market on prestige dad TV.
Oh, this is a nod to Apple. Okay, because like Ted Lasso, Masters of the Air, kind of like corny dad jokey shows.
But more like with a historical Storm the Beach, World War II kind of vibes. I think that's so it's not like...
What makes it prestige?
Probably
because you're subscribing to Apple TV Plus. So you're in the top 1%. It's good because Lifetime was kind of like, Lifetime was like the women's network, but there really wasn't like the men's network. But now in streaming,
now we have Apple TV.
Apple could be that player. Now you have Dad
this
Prestige.
was in GQ. We have to give credit. When I read this, I was like, this is the kind of zeitgeisty think piece I could use more of. So yeah, it's sort of like... It's comparing like the halcyon days of prestige TV were like The Sopranos, Mad Men, Breaking Bad. And now 25 years later, we're in this, let's see.
Masters of the Air.
Somewhere in between the two poles of highfalutin drama and at-home lobotomization is prestige dad TV. So
all
good.
Right, well, I will continue trying to get over the flu while watching a lot of prestige dad TV.
Okay. Well, you guys heal up. Yeah, and I think we'll have the quad back next week. So thank you to all our listeners, viewers, commenters, back channel. Lots happening, and it's fun to share it with all of you. So have a great week, and you'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a virtual high five by rating it and reviewing it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Find more information about each episode in the show notes and follow us on social media by searching for @MoreOrLess, @DaveMorin, @Lesson, @JLesson, and as for me, I'm @Brit. See you guys next time.